A new geopolitical picture is being formed in the Caucasus as a result of the Karabakh War against the backdrop of passive engagement of the European Union. We'll try to learn the European perspective on the recent hostilities and their outcomes in our discussion with Dr. Stefan Meister, German expert on Eastern Europe and Caucasus. Dr. Meister, it's a great opportunity to be able to discuss with you several aspects regarding the Karabakh conflict. Realizing that the European Union is not a monolithic structure, let me still ask you to comment on the European perspective regarding the Karabakh War and its outcomes.
I think we have to say that for me it's a big failure for the European Union in not being a player in the ceasefire agreement and not being a player also in ending the war and dealing also with the outcomes of the war. And I think it shows maybe also, or it says also a lot about the dysfunctionality of the OSCE in Minsk format, where France as a EU member state was co-chair beside US and Russia, but which did not bring any tangible results in the last year. It created a lot of frustration, and it was just a format to meet, but not to solve problems, to work on key issues. So it was much more a platform. And I think it's a problem that the EU has somehow disengaged from the South Caucasus. Sure, it's very active in technical support. It's doing also in peace building, in conflict negotiations, so on with civil society, it's quite active, but I think that's not enough. I think it's a crucial region between Russia and the Middle East, between Asia, China, and Europe, I think these conflicts matter particularly also the Karabakh conflict matter for Europe. So it's somehow at the margins of Europe, but I think it's very short thought, if there is really this disengagement from the region, these lip services we could observe during the war, but no action at all. And I think it's really crucial also for Azerbaijan and Armenia that a player like the EU, which is a soft power actor, so it's not a hard power actor, is coming back to the region, to the conflict more in a comprehensive way, strengthens multilateral instruments which are really seriously engaging in solving conflict, solving also social and economic problems in this region, and creates maybe new platform also, beyond this OSCE Minsk platform.
Dr. Meister, before we touch upon the European normative power you also mentioned, let me ask about the new geopolitical picture in the region. The deployment of the Russian troops, which are supposed to prevent another flare-up, the active involvement of a NATO member, Turkey, in South Caucasus, the unblocking of communication lines. What type of advantages and challenges do these new realities present for the Western community?
Have a ceasefire agreement without the West. So the main Russian goal, or one of the main Russian goals, was to keep the West out of this ceasefire agreement and also of the region. I think Russian leadership can much better live with Turkey, also as an authoritarian state, which is by its governance structures much more close to the Russian system in some ways. And Putin has experiences also in doing deals and bargaining with Erdogan in Syria, in Libya. So I think for Russia, Turkey is more acceptable than the EU member states or the US, as the key player in NATO, and in the Western Alliance. So I think I see here as the main challenge how to re-engage with the region, how to re-engage with this conflict and bring also EU know-how or Western know-how in terms of civil conflict solution, rebuilding also infrastructure, and the whole region, bringing in this back into this conflict and into the region. And I think that's very difficult, because I think we really beyond this conflict or above this conflict, we also have the Russia Western US conflict, yeah. So there really since a couple of years we have fundamental changes in the relations between Russia and the West. They have become really serious competitors, and Russia has this interest to keep the West out, and the West in itself is somehow divided. Yeah, we just ending of the Trump era, as a US president who has tried to destroy the multilateralism, multilateral institutions. Yeah, so and I think there's also a question. What does it mean, Western engagement? What are the Western interests also in this region? What are the US interests and the EU interests in this region? And does they not need to be redefined somehow? And how to enter the region? Maybe Turkey is here really also a partner. Yeah, it's still a NATO member. It's still and Erdogan just repeated this, has an interest to enter the European Union. Despite all the problems. So I see here also opportunities with Turkey. I think that needs all to be developed, and there needs to be a strategy also, yeah, from the European side towards the region, which adapts to these new realities.
Dr. Meister, Europe's eastern periphery is in turmoil while the European Union itself is suffering from internal cracks. The bloody war in Karabakh, as well as the tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean, domestic instability and blows to democracy in Georgia and Belarus, geopolitically speaking, the return of power politics. Do you think that the European normative power is receiving a huge backlash and resistance in this corner of the world?
I think the main challenge of the power is the EU itself. It's the EU's internal weakness, and countries like Hungary and Poland who talk about a sovereign democracy and undermine this normative power from inside of the EU. Yeah, and it's the lack of unity and the lack of also a strategy towards the East. Yeah, so I think Eastern Partnership is somehow in a limbo. Yeah, it is in a crisis. What comes next, I think, is the big question. So what do we offer next to these countries if there is no membership perspective, or what could be beyond membership perspective for countries who are maybe not interested in a membership? So I don't see the main challenge for this normative power is first of all in the region. I saw a velvet revolution in Armenia with big hopes of democratic change, and Armenians are very frustrated about the EU because of the disengagement, because of lacking kind of support in this conflict and solving the conflict. Yeah, and also on Turkey, sure, I think Erdogan has become more authoritarian, but I think this backlash has also come with the refusal of a membership perspective somehow, yeah, from key member states. So it is the absence of the EU in many fields. Also, for instance, in the security sector. Security sector is much more than hard power. Yeah, and the EU could be here much more active, and it needs to be also more active in the hard power field. Yeah, so I think I see here the main problems, and I think South Caucasus region for me still has a huge potential for the EU. You have still a big interest in Georgia, yeah, in the EU and in its integration, and also for Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is an important and even more important, yeah, energy supplier also for the EU, and also there are changes going on. Yeah, so I think EU has to do its homework, yeah, and it has to rethink its approach towards this region in a wider perspective, also with the Mediterranean, with Central Asia, Caspian region, Turkey, yeah. So, and I think it's not just the South Caucasus. The South Caucasus is the bridge between different regions, and that's why it is so important also for the EU.
Dr. Meister, the public opinion in Azerbaijan has been very disappointed in the recent years and during the war by the fact that many Western countries have not treated the Karabakh conflict in the same way as Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and Donbass, despite the UN Security Council resolutions and other statements by various international institutions. There has been very little pressure on Armenia to implement them, and Yerevan has rarely been called an occupying country. Do you think such a position not only questions the sincerity of the EU's approach, but also help to protract the conflict and eventually led to the war?
This position of the EU, you mean, yeah? Or
Yeah,
this perception of the EU from the Azerbaijani side? I think in some way, yes, that, and I think President Aliyev has made this several times very clear, this impression that there is not really an interest in solving the conflict from the Western side, from the EU side, that there is a kind of indirect acceptance of the status quo, which was playing in the hands for Armenia, yeah, from an Azerbaijani side. I think this has created quite a frustration in Azerbaijan, yeah. So, and I think that's a matter of fact. I think it's somehow problematic from the EU perspective. Azerbaijan tried so much to get a good image in the EU, in Western countries. Yeah, it really tried in different ways, and it failed. Yeah, and it has something to do also with its governance. Yeah, with its system of governance, in the way how it is dealing with civil society and opposition. So I think this has also fueled this creation of a negative image of Azerbaijan. But I think for me, the main failure was, and maybe that was also a part of this construction with the OSCE Minsk group, that Western countries were bound with Russia here, and it was very difficult, yeah, to push the own agenda. But I think the main failure for me is just to give this conflict to Russia. Yeah, also in the Minsk group, in the end, who negotiated the ceasefire agreements in the last years, and also this final ceasefire agreement? It was more or less outsourced, yeah, to Russia. And I think this is where we have to blame ourselves, yeah, that in the end we cannot criticizing Russia and maybe, yeah, also the countries of the region for this outcome when we always when we in the end were not really investing more into conflict solution, also in terms on high politics, in terms of being willing to provide peacekeeping mission, for instance, yeah, pushing maybe for upgrading also a Minsk format with maybe other profiled members, yeah. So I think there could have been done more. This is now history, but I think that's maybe the opportunity now, yeah, to rethink what kind of multilateral format would be good for solving the conflict, or for going further, yeah, in also reconciliation in the region.
Thank you, Dr. Meister. These were the main topics I want to discuss with you.
Thank you. Yeah, great pleasure.